Thanks, Patrick. It's a pleasure joining you guys. We've known each other for a long time, and we've been able to help clients over the years, making sure that they proceed with the E2 visa in the best way possible. As we know, there's a lot of options out there, but not everybody knows exactly how to do this in a way that works for everyone. So let me talk a little bit about our firm, ourselves, and then we can jump into the actual topic at hand today.
Be great.
Carlos Colombo. I'm an attorney for over 20 years now. Actually, when I say that, it's hard to believe sometimes that has been almost 2 decades. But I've been practicing for 22 years now. We have offices here in Orlando, Tampa, and Miami. And our law firm has attorneys that specialize in different aspects of immigration law. I have always enjoyed doing the investor visas, E2s, EB5s, and the green card applications through employment or investment, like the EB1, EB2s, and the EB5s. And Sal is also with our firm, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Thanks, Carlos, and thanks, Patrick, for having us both on today. I'm Sal Picataggio. I've been with Colombo and Hurd for a little over a year now. I've been practicing for 10, and like Carlos, I too enjoy the E2 and EB5 investment visas, but also the special ability visas like EB1As and EB2 national interest waivers. But E2s seem to be coming back and forth. There's always the bread and butter. Everyone loves E2s, whether immigration is challenging or more straightforward. People still love doing E2s, and very happy to be discussing that with both of you today.
Perfect. Thanks. Well, maybe it could be good just to preface, what is the E2 visa and what are the general requirements?
Sal, you want to take that?
Sure. Thank you. The E2 visa, the treaty investor visa. Treaty in that only certain countries with treaties with the United States are eligible to participate in this visa that requires an investment into a new, existing, or franchise business for the purposes of continued operations, supporting the investor and his or her family, and of course, creating some jobs for U.S. citizens. It is a fairly business-friendly process compared to some of the other business immigration processes where it's more in tune with how business is done in 2021. All different types of businesses can be eligible for an E2, and our job here is to make sure that is structured properly, make sure that we are presenting what is required to the Immigration Service, either at the consulate or here through USCIS, on this business structure and this investment.
Thanks. What are, I guess, some of the general requirements or items to keep in mind for someone that might be applying for the E2 visa, whether it's through a startup, a franchise, or buying a business?
Well, I mean, the main issue typically, and what people usually will look for is, number one, what is the investment amount, right? It has to be, because immigration law provides for the basic requirements, and then within those requirements, it's up to us as the attorneys to make sure we guide people through what it actually means. So, and like Sal said, it requires a substantial investment in the U.S., and it also has to be a business that is active, that is actually going to be providing services or the sale of products, for example. It cannot be a passive investment, for example, just investing in stocks or undeveloped land, which is something that a lot of people will usually ask is, can I just make an investment in land or real estate as a passive investment and qualify for an E2? And obviously the applicant has to be from a country that has a treaty that is active with the United States. And there's a list of the treaty countries in the Department of State website. You always have to be careful it doesn't have a footnote that because some countries had treaties that were active in the past and they're no longer active right now. So, those basic requirements are always important. And then from a business perspective, it depends. Obviously, you can invest in a business that is brand new. It doesn't have to be operating right now. You can start from scratch. It can be an existing business. It can be a franchise. There's different options that you can explore depending on what you want to accomplish. Most applicants probably will choose either an existing business or some kind of franchise model because it's a little bit easier to satisfy some of the requirements on what's called marginality, to show will the business be able to produce enough for the applicant to live in the United States and also for the business to survive, to create a few jobs, et cetera, et cetera. So all those basic requirements are sometimes a little bit easier with existing businesses or franchises that have a record in the U.S. That is positive.
So Carlos and Sal, I think daily we get an email or some inquiry, I want to invest to get the E2 visa. And I ask, or they say, the minimum. And it's like, what is the minimum if someone's looking to buy a business or start a franchise from scratch? What type of case would you not really want to take on, that you have more doubt if it's going to get approved? Is there a set number, or does it really vary?
Well, that is the $1 million question, and not to say that it costs $1 million. That's not what I'm saying. It depends. I know it's a kind of a corny lawyer answer, but it really does depend on what they want to commit to this venture. There is no set investment amount that is required in the law and regulations. A lot of times you see kind of in and around $100,000, but even then, it kind of depends on what is required to get this business operational, which is another reason why we like existing businesses and franchises, because there's a purchase price or a franchise fee and other associated costs with that. And when I'm sending that to the immigration service, either here or through the consulate, I'm giving them the invoice. It costs this much. Here's the purchase price. Here's the franchise fee. I paid it. It's been paid. 100% of it has been paid. So there you go. I've committed the funds. When we're starting from scratch, which is great for certain clients, they have to justify that the amount that they're spending is necessary and enough to get this business off the ground. And then they have to commit those funds with no guarantee that their case is going to be approved. So the answer, is we will look into the business you're looking into and see what makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, and along with that, Patrick, I think it's the issue of, you may be able to win a case for a lower amount, $50,000, $60,000. That could happen.
Sure.
But is that business going to be a business that is going to survive in a year, in 2 years, or in 5 years when you're renewing the visa? And will it provide the applicant with enough income, not only to maintain the business, but also to be able to live in the United States? Some people may have income from abroad and they may not be looking for the business in order to be able to survive, but they're going to have to prove that to the consular officer that they have other sources of income. But on the other hand, when it comes time to renew the business, you want to make sure that the numbers are going to be in the positive, not negative. And realistically, if everybody could find a business for $50,000 that was a great business, that was generating $500,000 of income a year, then everybody would be investing in that, right? It's not that easy. So that's why you usually will see cases in the 150, 200 range are usually fairly common. But a lot of people lately are saying, no, I'm willing to invest a little bit more, or go in with a partner sometimes and have a higher amount for businesses that are a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, and I think on the upper investment range, it just opens up a lot more options, where you probably see a lot people purchasing existing businesses in Central Florida. If it's like $100K, the owner is generally working 40 to 50 hours, a week, and they generally trade at a multiple 2 to 3 times owner's compensation. So, is it really your American dream to take $40,000 out of a business that you're working 50 hours a week in?
Exactly.
But if you're investing 200, 300K, okay, from day one, you could be taking out 100K, maybe more. It's a little bit more interesting, especially for those that are earning a lot of money already in their home country, which is the case with a lot of these E2 visa holders, I imagine.
Exactly.
How do you see the marginality requirement? Because I would say like at least half of our clients are high net worth investors. So they have well over $1 million in net worth, and they have businesses abroad and they're traveling back and forth, and they want a good stable business with a day-to-day manager that they'll be overseeing from like a strategic and financial perspective. But maybe it's not giving a ton of money to them, where if they were going to be working 50 hours or even more on a weekly basis. So curious to hear your opinion on the marginality requirement from both job creation and then money that, basically the money that the investor would need to make.
Yeah, for job creation, it's not like an EB-5 where there's a required 10, but we need to show that there is going to be a continued path towards additional job creation over that initial 5-year period that the visa is usually for. And working with us and a good business plan, you're going to show what the growth of the business will be. But unlike an EB-5, it's not a required number of 10. Unlike an L1, it's not like you need a specific number of managers and supervisors and staff below that. You have that flexibility to structure the business that makes sense for the business owner. But it needs to make sense. I mean, you're going to hear stories, of course, someone hired 3 people over the course of 5 years and that was fine. And you hear someone who hired 10 people, 15 people, and it has to make sense for the business. And there has to be that plan for continued growth over time.
Yeah.
What do you
and
see
I think that under the Trump administration, there seemed to be more of an emphasis on creation of jobs, right? Okay. And that we saw consular officers ask, well, but you're only going to be creating 1 job or 2 jobs. How is that going to benefit the U.S. economy? How is that going to be beneficial to the U.S.? So you had to be more prepared for that. We'll have to see now with the Biden administration. This hire American policy is no longer the official policy of the U.S. government. So we'll have to see how that trend, I think it's going to change. And we're going to go back to, yes, jobs are important. And it's one factor to prove marginality and the benefits to the U.S. economy, but it's not the only factor, right? So we usually will recommend at least showing, 2 or 3 jobs, being created. They don't all have to be full time. Sure. It has to make sense for the numbers and for the business, but that always helps.
Could these jobs be independent contractors, or do they have to be actual employees, like W-2 employees?
Yeah, I mean, usually W-2s is going to be viewed more favorably because they're more permanent. 1099s, sure. You can get rid of the person at any moment. Although the reality is, in most states, like here in Florida, employment is at will, which means you can fire the person at any time.
Anyway,
yeah.
Which is sometimes the arguments that we will make when immigration questions at 1099. But I think if we have 1 or 2 W-2 salary, okay, then maybe add 1 or 2 1099s can make it look more interesting.
Yeah, I wouldn't feel great doing an entirely 1099 organizational structure. But if you're going to mix some people, some 1099, some W-2s, and that probably would be okay. It may depend on an officer who wants to mess around with the case. But yeah, having a mix like that typically could be fine.
Well, I want to bring on some questions. So we have JR. Hey, as a Mexican, I am able to have any financial aid when applying to a franchise, not risk invested perhaps $90,000 in advance, but could I be able to get $50,000 in financial aid? From that, I imagine bank financing, which we've had a couple clients explore, but they've never been able to get it until they actually have a green card. It's been very difficult to get financing. I think maybe there's some exceptions for Canadians that can get financing through like TD Bank, but from Mexico, I think it would be very difficult. And then, yeah, there were a couple other questions. I guess in terms of, advance, well, I guess he had a couple more follow-ups. So say the investment's 150,000 and the franchise fees 40,000, working capital 30,000, real estate deposit. What counts to that substantial investment amount? Like, what if you have $30,000 in the bank account? Is that going to count towards the substantial investment amount for the E2 visa?
Well, there's a little bit of a proportionality requirement where whatever the required investment is, the more of an investment that's required, a smaller percentage of that you can spend. So if the total all in is only 80, 100, 150,000, they're going to probably expect you to spend all of that.
Sure.
The entire thing. If the total all in is $500,000, maybe 200, 300, 400, the higher you go, the slightly less of a percentage you may be able to invest. At the end of the day, the requirement is it has to be substantial and needs to be committed. So saying that I have money coming in and it's not in the investor's account, it's not in the business account, it's not in escrow or anything, then where's the commitment? So there's a couple different factors at play.
Yeah, and money in a bank account typically is not counted really as investment because it's not committed, right? So now we have been able to obtain approvals without much questioning. If let's say you have 100,000 actually invested that you spent, that it's been legally committed, and you have 20 or 30,000 in the operating account for operating expenses, we would argue that has been committed because we will show in the business plan that this will be money that will be spent in the first few months of operation until the business has the sales that it needs to get going. But you shouldn't rely solely on that to get to a comfortable amount for the investment.
Moderation is a good thing to practice with the E2 investment. Not too many 1099s, not too much money in the operating account. Don't spend everything on just assets. I had someone years ago who said, well, I want to buy dumpsters. What do you mean you want to buy dumpsters? You're going to run like a hauling company? You're going to drop them off, pick up? Like, no, I'm just buying the dumpsters. No, that's not a business. That's just dumpsters.
What are some kind of like red flag businesses that you see at some of these consulates where maybe there's been fraud or there's just been people that don't actually open the business? Are there any kind of businesses that the consulates are just very strict on getting approved?
Well, now I'm looking at dumpsters.
Yeah, what I've seen a lot of questions lately is flipping houses. Everybody wants to be in that business, which clearly to me means that it's been saturated or is saturated already. And the problem with that a lot of the times is, number one, what kind of company is that? Is it a construction company? Do you have the licenses to do that, which may be difficult to obtain? Or do you have a partner that is licensed to do construction? Or are you just hiring people here and there and fixing the house and flipping it and that's it? I think that consulates are getting a little bit tired of those models. And unless you have a very good organization for that kind of business with the proper licenses, that's not going to be easy. Because again, it goes to, well, you bought a house, that's just a real estate investment that is passive and that's it.
That makes sense. And then, we've had approvals throughout this crisis, not from all over the world, but, we had one recently in Chile, some parts of Asia, we've had E2 visa approvals. Could you just comment, a little bit in light of what's going on, what the strategy is for 2021 if you want to move here on the E2 visa?
Prayer and meditation. No, the consulates are inconsistent. It's an inconsistent situation with consulate availability, with appointments. Some consulates, maybe there's multiple consulates in one country. One might be open, one might not. I dealt with that in Germany not long ago, where one was open and one wasn't. And so the planning is going to be essential to make sure you can plan for the possibility of getting your case pushed through in the consulate, but being prepared to wait for appointment availability, being prepared to have your appointment rescheduled, maybe only a couple of weeks away. But, and I think, Carlos, you could probably elaborate on this more, we've been successful in actually making requests to get appointments moving, even in light of some of these challenges.
Yeah, I think it depends. It's a country by country situation. Some countries are, with COVID, are having a harder time than others. So in part, it depends on your particular nationality, where you're located, if we can get the appointment or not. And some people are looking to change status in the U.S. rather than filing in the embassy. Our preference as attorneys is usually to file the case at the embassy or consulate, because that way you get the visa stamped on your passport. A visa, which is the document that allows you to enter the United States under the E2 visa, can only be issued by an embassy or a consulate. You cannot do that inside the United States. If you're here under a visa category that allows you to change status, which means, for example, if you're here on a B1, B2, and you want to switch to the E2 inside the US, you can do that, but that will not give you the actual visa on the passport. So if let's say you change status in the US, you're here for a year running your business. If you leave the United States and want to come back under the E2, you will have to stop by the consulate or the embassy, present your case, your E2 case, and have them interview you and give you the visa. But some people, because they can't get the appointments, are actually changing their status in the US.
Yeah, just the nature of travel is much more difficult now. People who are already here don't necessarily want to go back and forth. There's no guarantee they're going to get an appointment in a reasonable time. So they change their status and they'll deal with the consulate when they can. That requires you to extend your status here in the US by submitting more paperwork every 2 years. Whereas if you had the visa, and it is a multiple entry visa, and it does last for a significant amount of time, up to 5 years, that status can be renewed just by the nature of traveling in and out of the United States, which is why we want them to get the visa. That renewal by travel is fantastic. But the nature of difficulties of travel in 2020 and now in 2021 means changes of status is just going to be the way to do it. And look, if you want to be here running a business, there's no better inspiration than you can't go anywhere else. So that we work with the clients to work with what's best for them and what's available.
And I had a question for you two. We've been involved with E2 visa businesses for far less time than Colombo Herd, just the last 6 years. We started in 2015. And we thought that there would be a lot more E2 visa renewals with our clients. We've had a few, but most of the time they get a green card from the spouse, or the investor gets a green card. And I think that's the worry, and that's something that's on every E2 visa investor's head. Whether wherever they're in the process of investing, or they already have the E2 visa, or they're thinking about it. Would love to just hear from you two, some different cases, and what are the options to think about if you want to get a green card eventually, through yourself, the investor, or through a spouse.
Yeah, so there's different options. I mean, I think E2 is probably one of my favorite non-immigrant visas, right? Because you have immigrant visas, which are the green cards, is what gives you permanent residency, and you have non-immigrant, which are temporary. And the E2 is temporary in nature. It's not, it doesn't lead to a green card or a U.S. permanent residency, but it is fairly flexible and fairly straightforward and fast compared to applying for a green card. Applying for a green card takes time, usually around a year or sometimes longer. So the E2 is a good first step to the U.S. Once they're here, there's different options usually that they will explore. Typically, if you have a couple that is married, the spouse that is more employable, that may have better job opportunities, will not be the principal applicant. They will be the dependent spouse, because they will get a work permit to work anywhere they want in the U.S. So they are they can go in the market and find a job, and sometimes they could be sponsored for a green card that way, either through an EB3 or EB2 category for the green card. There's also combinations where you can do E2 and EB5s, where you can move that towards a permanent residency based on a higher investment amount as you're here in the United States. Or the national interest waiver, EB2, has become fairly popular the last few years. And sometimes it's a little bit easier because you're here in the US again, and you can develop some connections. You sort of know, okay, now that I'm here, I know what I can do in my field. I research, maybe you're able to get the license that you wanted, et cetera. So those are some of the more common options. Sal, I don't know if you had comments on that.
Yeah. I mean, it used to be E2 to EB5 was the thing, because you could use the E2 investment towards the EB5 investment. And when you've spent 100 or 150 or maybe 200 out of a total of what used to be $500,000 for an investment, and you're counting the jobs that you created before towards your 10 required for an EB5, that was a really popular proposition to make. Oh, well, I only need to invest a little bit more, and the business has been doing good, so I'll reinvest and I'll do an EB5. But now that EB5 is $900,000 up to 1.8 million, that's a lot for a lot of people. So like Carlos said, the national interest waiver, I'm thinking we're going to see more and more and more of. They've been in the US, they've established something, and they can potentially, with the right planning, have set up a business that will help them further whichever nationally important endeavor they want to pursue for the EB2 NIW. They can use that business and those contacts to support that future contribution that they want to make. They already have business partners. They're part of the community. Like they said, they may be able to get certain licenses and other certifications in the US that they may require. So I'm thinking E2 to NIW is going to be more and more popular as time goes on.
Are there any further legal considerations that you two would like to discuss in terms of just general, if someone interested in applying for the E2 visa this year?
Yeah, I would say, we talked about the change of status, but be careful. This is a general conversation we're having. Mm-hmm. We're not providing specific legal advice to anyone listening here because we don't know your individual situation. So, for example, don't think that you can enter the U.S. under the visa waiver program and then change your status to an E2. You can't do that. If you entered under the visa waiver, you're precluded from changing your status in the United States or extending it. So also, for example, we have a lot of clients from Brazil that may have dual nationality. They may have a spouse that is Colombian, or they may have Italian citizenship through their ancestry. So if you enter with your Brazilian passport under a B1, B2, just because you have the Italian doesn't mean that you can change status in the US either, because you did not enter with a B1, B2 in your Italian passport. So there's little detail. Those details is where people will make mistakes, not hire an attorney, and not get proper advice on the individual case. And I think the other thing is not committing the funds, right? I think that's another big mistake that people make. They think that they can get away with as little as an investment as possible. And I think that's what Sal said is important, and why going with somebody like you guys who understands the business side, because the attorney should not be providing advice on what is a good business or not. That's not our role, right? You need the experts that understand business. And if you have a fair market value for a franchise, if you have a fair market value for an existing business, then it becomes much easier to have the funds committed and to be able to prove why that is a substantial investment. So those are, I think, the two things that I would caution people to be aware of.
And about the commitment of funds, also sometimes the path of those funds, suddenly someone comes in and, well, my dad made the investment for me. He was going to give me the funds anyway, and he just transferred the money over. It's like, well, now that's your dad's investment. and not yours. So that's something else I see, like they're committing the funds and it's not enough, or it's the path of funds is all messed up. We can't trace it back to where it needs to be. An E2 is not as intense as an EB5 with the tracing of funds requirements, but that personal investment is still required. And if they move too quickly, we may need to undo some things before submitting a case.
Okay. Maybe I could just talk very briefly, and feel free to jump in from a legal perspective on the few different options. But talking from experience, the startups that I've seen, especially, generally it's someone that's already living here in the US and has like good industry background. So maybe they're already here on an L1 or H1B, and they've been here for 5-10 years. They have the relationships, and it's a lot less risky to do a startup at that point. Talking from my own experience, my brother and I have created 2 companies in the last 6 years, and each one was less than $20,000. So that I don't think $20,000 is going to qualify for the E2 visa. And had I not already had the pre-existing relationships, it would have taken a lot more time to break even. And also, I was fortunate to do it very early in my career before having kids. So I think for those reasons, we generally advise against the startup unless you already have deep US experience here, and you already have the relationships that you can leverage. But yeah, I think for the existing business or the franchise, they're both excellent options. Existing business, I think, and feel free to talk about some of the experience you've seen, Saul and Carlos, but people can spend a lot of time and money reviewing the financials, and more money up with the accountant, where it's going to be $3,000 to $4,000 for a proper audit, potentially more money. And if you do that 3, 4, or 5 times, it's $20,000. So if you had anticipated only investing $100,000, $120,000, just be prepared that when you investigate these businesses, you might come up with some issues with it, where people mix their personal and company assets and liabilities, and they're not really running the books super clean. And working with a corporate attorney, with the accountant, you'll uncover these things and understand what the risk of potentially taking over that business might be. We do see that once the businesses are $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 in market value, they tend to be much more professionally run than a business for sale for $50,000 or $100,000. Where if someone's selling a business for $80,000, $100,000, depending on the type of business model, like if it's a small cafe, you could be a slave of the business, where you can't keep increasing the revenue and the profits, and you're going to have to open up a second location, and you can't keep expanding. Where if you invest $100,000 in a pool service business, landscaping business, property management business, that could be a nice little base that you keep on growing. So I think really for a lot of these E2 visa investors, just understanding what their objectives are and how important it is to have an ongoing support, i.e. the franchisor, or if they've already run businesses, perhaps in the US, or they've owned 3 businesses in their home country, they speak English very well, existing business can be a great option, where you already acquire the client contracts and you can then scale up faster. But I think for anyone, I would look at both opportunities. And through vetted bids, we have 3,500 businesses available in Florida. 1,800 are franchises, 1,700 or so are businesses for sale. So anyone can explore our site. I'll just type it here, vettedbiz.com. And we're very transparent with the business opportunities that are available. And you can reach out directly to the franchisor yourself, or the business broker representing the seller. Or if you want support on the franchise side, we can help you to do a custom study on your behalf. And we can reach out to all possible franchises that might be open to the E2 visa, meeting your criteria, and really save a lot of time and money. And then on the business broker side, we have a good network of business brokers throughout the state of Florida that are well-versed in the E2 visa. But if you're looking to buy a business in, say, California or Texas, for example, there's not this MLS service like there is in Florida where there's thousands of businesses for sale. In Texas, there's brokers that have 30, 50 listings themselves, and you're going to have to spend a lot more time looking at websites like vettedbiz.com, BizBuySell. In California, bizben.com is a site. But you can't have a trusted advisor, a broker that's just representing you on the buy side in these states as often, because the seller is not willing to split the commission. So in Florida, it's a lot easier, I'd say, to buy an existing business. But in Texas and California, for those reasons, if it's your first time buying a business, it can be a big endeavor doing it alone. And generally, you're going to have to contact 10, 20, 30 business brokers that all have their own listings to go through the different business opportunities. So that's just a very general overview for someone that's looking to buy a business for their E2 visa. And then on the franchise side, we're seeing a lot of clients investing in service-based businesses. And it's really important to understand how they've been impacted by COVID. Don't just talk to the franchisor, talk to 3, 4, 5 franchisees to understand better their financial impact. And if you ask in the right way, we find that they're pretty open to sharing their numbers and also their feedback with the franchisor. Would they have done it again? Are they happy with the franchisor? You can contact franchisees that have actually left the system where the contract's been canceled or they sold their franchise. As franchises are regulated by the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, and one of the requirements is, I believe, in item 20 to show the openings, closures, ceased contracts, and then in the FDD later on, down a few pages, you can also have the contact information of current franchisees as well as ones that recently left the system. So we're happy to provide help and support to understand these numbers, the key things to look at for franchises, industry outlook, and everything. But you've got to really do the work, your homework as the E2 visa investor, especially if you're going to be investing a lot of your time in the business. You better be sure that you're making the right choice. And you do that from talking to franchisees, working with the right immigration attorney that has top experience with people successfully getting the E2 visa through a franchise investment, and surrounding yourself with the right advisors, as well as asking the right questions to franchisors and franchisees.
Yeah, I think those are all great points, Patrick. I think that, if I were someone looking at this video, what would be, the two things that I would want to take from this is you need to, because I think the most frustrating part of an E2 visa is finding the right business. We talk to a lot of people and they sort of spin their wheels trying to find that perfect business for $80,000 that just doesn't exist. So sometimes they have to be more realistic with how much is it really going to cost me to find a business that is viable, that is a good business. And going back to that question we had earlier, sometimes an existing business owner may be able to do some owner financing that they're willing to do on a part of it, part of the purchase price. So maybe it is a little bit more than what you have in cash, but they may be willing to take that chance with you on some kind of owner financing on the one hand. And on the other hand, making sure that you have the right professionals, right? You have to have someone that knows what they're doing in helping you find the business. So that's where you guys come in with the experience you have and the level of professionalism, and then the right attorneys, because you want that team to be cohesive and work together, right? And making sure that nothing is missed either from the business side or from the legal side, and making sure that we proceed in a way that we maximize the chance for approvals. I think that's where people fail a lot of the times. They go, well, my friend told me about this, so I'm going to go with that. And then they never really move forward with it because it's not realistic. So, finding the right professionals is always the first step that anyone should take.
Yeah, and we get that question all the time. Like, well, okay, so I want to do this E2. What should I invest in? And I know for a long time everyone was doing convenience stores, and there was a trend for early childhood education. A lot of schools, they're opening up preschools and daycare centers. It looks like medical services are becoming a lot more popular. But Patrick, what are you seeing as kind of like a trending business activity, either with the existing businesses or with the franchises?
I would say asset-light businesses that have a good amount of clientele that they're building. So that could be anything from a barbershop franchise where you have that book of clients and you're building it up, insurance, accounting, different service-based businesses that you could either start from zero with 80,000, 100,000, 120,000, or acquire an existing book and portfolio of clients for more like 200, 250,000, and then build upon that book of clients. So real estate property management has been popular. Depending on what segment, residential hasn't been hit that hard. So it's gone down maybe 10% in sales, where vacation rentals has been hit a little harder. But depending on if you're independent or part of a franchise system, we've seen some franchise systems really adapt to domestic travel and adjusted the time that instead of a week minimum, now it's 3 days, but it's more expensive. So I would say a lot of these businesses that you can build your book of clients, it's renewable revenue businesses, as opposed to a business that you're walking by and you want to buy ice cream, or it's just kind of an impulsive purchase that's highly dependent on the location. I'd say those type of businesses that are very dependent on their location and the food product doesn't deliver well have not been popular in 2020 and 2021. But yeah, we've had some clients do very well investing in restaurants, but where 30, 40, 50% of their business is delivery. And even some where it's close to 80% plus is delivery and pickup. And they went into a space that, whether it was a ghost kitchen or a space that wasn't, $10,000, $20,000 a month, and they've been able to sell via third-party apps, or even the own app that's developed by the franchisors. So those are some of the industries that we've seen our clients invest in recently. And we're always on the lookout for the next thing. Right now we're evaluating a cell phone repair business, a technology repair business, that the numbers look pretty good. Some fitness boutiques, which haven't been hit so hard because they only have like 4, 5, 6 people in at a time, and they more focus on high income earners that still are still happy to pay top dollars as long as they're not working out with another 20, 30 people.
Yeah, so that's good to know that there are a ton of options out there. And when our clients are looking into, maybe they want to stay in the field that they've been working in their whole life, or maybe they want to try something new, that they have options, that they do have options available. It helps, because you get some like, oh, I want to open up a pizzeria because Americans love pizza. And we do. It's true, but maybe that's not going to be the best for them.
Yeah, we look at all the numbers. Like Blaze Pizza is going through their FDD, and the investment range really varies a lot. But if you invest, on the higher end, like $700,000 in a Blaze Pizza or like franchise concept, it could take you 5, 6, 7 years to recoup that capital. Where if you're going to get in a pizza concept with the similar numbers, but you have big tenant improvement, you negotiate with the landlord, they defray a lot of your upfront expenses, and it's $250K or $300K, that's a huge difference. So we can help provide some of the tools to kind of understand the payback when you're going to get your money back after investing the capital. But try to invest as little as possible, is what I always tell our clients, especially for those type of businesses that don't have that you have to rely on the client coming to you, and that you can't expand out and service clients, whether it's commercial cleaning, landscaping, or other activities where it's not at your office or at your retail premises. We have just a
Yeah.
couple questions. Oh, so maybe a couple questions, and then we can wrap it up if that's cool.
Sounds good.
All right. So we have Philippe Saint-Pierre. What is the delay to get an appointment at the embassy in Canada to get an E2 visa if, say, the visa application is ready to be sent?
Canada.
Well, Canada, we actually have been able to get some appointments. I mean, it's really week by week right now with COVID. So if the application is ready to send, we will contact the post and see what they will offer. But Canada has been a little bit faster than some other locations with issuing those appointments. But it really is a day by day, week by week thing.
Yeah. But they're going to take their time to review a case. But it's not like a London consulate where they are going to take 45 days. For a little bit, and this is less so now, but for a little while, people were experiencing, they were getting appointments and then getting them rescheduled for maybe several months later. That looks like it's starting to ease up a little bit. And as Carlos said, we're able to petition, essentially, just ask them, like, we need this appointment sooner. Here's why. This business is essential that they're there to run it. Able to make arguments on why we need to get this appointment sooner rather than later. And we try to work on that discretionary decision by the officer to make an appointment for us or not.
Any other concluding thoughts?
Other than how much I think we both like E2 visas. When someone comes to us and I'm thinking about E2, I'm thinking about L1, it's like, oh, please be on the list, please be on the list. Oh, you're on the list, do the E2. I mean, unless the green card, they want that ease of, because L1 has a more direct path to green card because you can go right to the EB1C. But if they're trying to balance immigration plus the running a business, and they want that flexibility to travel, and they don't have to worry about structuring the employee hierarchy in a very specific way, I just really like giving them the E2 as the option. And then more and more, especially now we're bringing in NIWs as an option, there are more options to get to the green card process out of the E2.
Yeah, I think as a last thought, Patrick, I think 2021 it will be an interesting year. I think a good year. I think there will be opportunities for people to get existing businesses that are going to be a good deal, perhaps. I think you already see a lot of energy from people wanting to get out and do things and spend money and do
Miami's
the things.
in full swing. Our office is right off Lincoln Road, and it's wild. There's a lot of people walking around.
Exactly. And so I think that 2021 is going to be sort of that recovery year where people are getting the vaccines and we're going to get out of this situation. So, you can't wait until, that is up here and everybody already is in the game. You want to make that decision as soon as you can, get in the door and grab some of those opportunities. So I think that this is, and people see the U.S. as the number one world economy, as the place that will recover the fastest. So
seen that with the vaccines.
Exactly.
I mean, what is it, 15% or 20% of the population's had at least one dose?
Right. And so I think that you're going to continue to see that trend, but you don't want to wait until October, November to make that decision. Yeah. So that's why, for 2021, that would be, something to think about is getting in before it, a lot of people sort of beat you to that opportunity.
Yeah. If you're looking to end up in the United States sometime this summer or the fall, it's definitely a good time to start even now. You can review businesses, you can get your investment in order. You don't have to be rushing around, and you can use that time that you have available to work with the consulate for available appointments. But meanwhile, you'll have all the rest of the case done.
Exactly.
Yeah, we've been having people reach out saying they want to have their kids in school in August, and they got to get going now.
Yeah, it would definitely be now. It would definitely be now to get going.
And what's the best way for someone watching this to get in contact to schedule initial consultation with you, Saul, or Carlos?
Visit our website. Yeah, if you go to our website, ColomboHerdLaw.com, that would be the best way to reach us. You can there's different languages you can choose from there. You can send an inquiry online, and then we'll be happy to chat with you.
Perfect. So yeah, I just put it up on the screen. Schedule a consultation with Carlos or Sal. Visit their website at colomboherdlaw.com. It was an absolute pleasure to have both of you on, and really appreciate the time and also from the people that participated today with the questions.
Thanks, Patrick.